Hello again, everybody. This week for the WWE, I wanted to talk about the top 5 things I think Triple H needs to improve upon for the overall product. You know, we're coming off of WrestleMania, so it's kind of like a new season for TV for the WWE. And there are some things that need fixing. Some of them are major things, in my opinion. Some of them may be slightly smaller things, but still wanted to count this down. I thought about doing this for AEW too, but there would be a lot more than 5 things that I think AEW needs to improve upon in the downward spiral for Tony Khan's company. But let's talk about the WWE. First things first, it's been a problem for the WWE for over a decade now. Since Raw went to 3 hours, I think there's been a problem with things being stale in the WWE because you get a lot of the same matchups a lot of the times. You get a lot of the tag teams floundering. Doesn't help, with the unified titles and the Usos having such a long reign that a lot of the other tag teams just kind of floundered around, never really stayed over, got over, fought each other a lot. The tag team division is very stale in my opinion. And a lot of the matchups are very stale. We have a draft coming up. Will that help, switch things up? That's kind of why they have a draft. Although I do feel like the roster is a lot smaller than it used to be when they used to have these drafts. So I don't really know how you fix this problem with Raw being 3 hours still, but it is a problem with the staleness when it comes to certain individuals being in matches with each other too many times. Number 4 in my countdown, I think another thing WWE needs to start doing is focusing on the people in the mid or undercard that are actually entertaining and put them on TV more. On the comedy side of things, you have the maximum male models that I think are actually naturally funny, maybe sometimes too cheesy, yeah. But, you can push them more. In the past, there's been comedy characters that were pushed hard, like Santino Marella, that I liked, and then there's been other ones that were pushed hard that I didn't like very much. But I think you could push maximum male models, not even just push them, but have them on TV more because they are entertaining. And of course, the big one, LA Knight. It's time to start pushing LA Knight. He's gotten himself over with the crowd. He's extremely entertaining. He's more entertaining than a big chunk of the roster, if not most of the roster. He ain't getting any younger. It's time to give him some momentum. They had him losing a lot before WrestleMania. Didn't even give him a WrestleMania moment, even though they had him talking about it on TV for weeks and weeks. It was a huge dropped ball. LA Knight continues to be a huge dropped ball for Triple H. Out of all these people that he had returned to the roster, LA Knight's the only one that got himself over. So give him credit and start pushing him. I don't get it. Number 3, and this is something I've talked about since I started this channel. The women's division does not get a lot of attention to detail from Triple H's booking. And I'm not one of those people that, you got to push the women's division just to look politically correct. I'm not one of those people. But I'm also not one of those people that are like, they're just the women wrestlers. You can't get them over. They're not as entertaining as the men. I think that's very wrong. I'm a normal person, and I think with the right booking, you could get anyone over. But the booking has to not just be right. You actually have to put an effort into it. And Triple H as a booker has not put an effort into the women whatsoever. I would say there was effort with Rhea Ripley when he first started booking. But even before her WrestleMania moment, that momentum was out the window. They have Charlotte Flair return as a face. That didn't work. Bianca Belair is spectacular, but not getting the right attention to detail in her stories. Belair is the only woman who actually in every single one of her main matches on a pay-per-view tells a story in her matches, which I appreciate so much. I can only imagine if she actually had real momentum in her stories, what kind of stories she could tell on pay-per-view. We saw her do that with Becky at WrestleMania last year. Just more effort in the storylines would be great for the women's division. They're teasing Rhea Ripley and Bianca again for the future. They did that months ago. They made you think that would be a match at WrestleMania, and it wasn't. Maybe there's speculation they will unify the women's title, but that doesn't bode well for the rest of the roster, because that means they might keep the other titles unified, and I don't think that's something that needs to happen, which is going to be my next thing I'm going to talk about. But yeah, just put the attention to detail in some of these women's stories that you do with the main event scene. You have 2 different women's titles right now, one for Raw and one for SmackDown. If you could put the effort into their stories like you do into the main event scene, suddenly your show is going to be better, because you're going to have that for the women's part of the show. It's going to mean more. It's going to be more entertaining. Put in the effort, Triple H. So that brings me to number 2 in what the WWE needs to do. It's another thing I've said a lot on this channel. You got to split these titles back up. If you're going to have a draft and you're going to split the roster, there needs to be 2 separate world titles. There needs to be 2 separate tag team titles, so you could get more people over. And you would make Raw a better show again. I don't know. They've gone back and forth. There was a period of time where SmackDown was the far superior show. And then there was a moment of time where Raw was the more superior show. But for a very long time, there has not been a period of time where both shows are just good. And a lot of that right now has to do with the fact that there's just one main title, and the title holder is only on a couple episodes a month, that being Roman Reigns. And so it doesn't give a lot of meaning to a lot of the other stories that are going on TV, especially on Raw, because Roman is hardly on Raw. So everybody on there is just doing nothing most of the time, fighting over the U.S. title. Austin Theory isn't as over as the WWE wants us to think he is. So that doesn't always work. That's why a lot of people did have the argument that you should have gave the title to Cody. He would be on both shows a lot, and maybe that would make the show feel more important or more entertaining at times. But Roman doesn't do both shows like that, so split up the title somehow. I don't know what they got to do. Just create a new title, I guess, is what they might do. Rumored for this draft, but doesn't that take away from Roman's reign that they're building up? I don't know what they're going to do, but only having one title on a champion that's not on a lot isn't good for both of your TV shows. And the main thing I think WWE needs to start focusing on going forward has a lot to do with the main event scene. It's starting to get redundant with the way Roman wins his matches, or the Bloodline wins matches in general. Just constant interference to win matches. It's starting to give very much the NWO when the NWO got stale. The NWO matches would always end in DQ, or they would always end with cheating. That's what we're seeing from the Bloodline now. Every single main Roman match on these main pay-per-views end in the Bloodline interfering and cheating. It is getting old, and it is going to start possibly making the Bloodline feel a little stale again, like it started to get after last year's WrestleMania. They're going to have to find a way. They're going to have to find the new Sami Zayn to make the story relevant again if they're going to continue down this path. Now, I see a lot of people saying, oh, the Bloodline story is not going to end on a high because it's on the downward trend again. It's not going to be a 10. You're not going to end the story on a 10. It's going to end on like an 8 or a 7. And that very well could happen because it is starting to get stretched out again. But it's a storyline. You could always add to a storyline. You could always make a storyline more interesting. As a writer in the past, I truly believe that 100%. There's always a way to better a storyline. But one way to make a storyline worse is to get redundant, and the way Roman is winning all the matches is getting old and stale again. So that is definitely something that I think should be worked on going forward. You need to find a new out. You need to find new dusty finishes to get Roman these wins. I've never understood why Roman just can't win clean a lot sometimes. He's in God mode. They hype him up as being in God mode. And sure, that would make the bloodline maybe less relevant if they're not interfering a lot, but there's got to be new ways to do this going forward, in my opinion, before you do get too redundant and you do start to water down the story.